kena buddhyam mohayashiva me tadekam vadanashchitya ena shreyo hamapniyam. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Lokeshmin Dvidhanistha Pura Prokta Maya Nagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Om.
Thank you, Manishji. Hemaji, may I request you to just give us a quick recap of the last week's learning?
Yeah. So last week we started chapter 3, Karma Yoga, and it is the next most important chapter after second chapter. In second chapter, we have studied 45th and 48th verses in detail, and the seeds for the third chapter have been sown in the second chapter, 48th verse, where the 48th verse says, Yogastha Kuru Karmani. That is the seed point for third chapter, Karma Yoga. Yogastha means established in action. Kuru Karmani. Kuru means do, karma means action. So established in yoga, perform action. That is a one short sentence definition of Karma Yoga. So Arjuna listened to second chapter very carefully, and he was very attentive, and he thought he understood everything. And I think he did. But then, because of the knowledge that Sri Krishna Bhagavan gave, some questions came up in his mind. And it is the skill of the teacher who gives the knowledge in such a beautiful way that the student comes up with the very intelligent and good questions. So that's what Arjuna is doing now. So right in the beginning of third chapter, he says, Oh Sri Krishna, if you think knowledge is superior to action, why are you telling me to engage in this horrible act of killing? So that's what he says. And then he says, what you told me in chapter 2, it seems to be a little bit contradictory, because one time you say, act. The other time you say, be silent. So what am I supposed to do now? You're saying, be silent and you act. So he says, please clarify my doubts. So what Arjuna is looking for is more knowledge, because the connection between karma and dharma was not dealt with in second chapter. So see how perceptive he is, because Arjuna is very concerned about his dharma. Dharma means you want to do the right thing, because if you do wrong, that will result in sin. He doesn't want to do anything wrong. So he's thinking, is there any implied meaning in what Krishna Bhagavan is trying to tell me? Am I missing something? Like that. And he's asking very humbly. He's not saying, what do you mean? You said one time you say you act, the other time you say you be silent. He's not asking like that. It's very humbly and very nicely he's asking. And he says, what you said seems to be contradicting. He's not saying it is contradicting. It seems to be. So that's what he asks in the first two shlokas. And then in the third shloka, Sri Krishna Bhagavan replies to Arjuna's question. He says, Arjuna, in this world, there are two types of yoga. One is Jnana Yoga, and then other is Karma Yoga. For both, there is a common factor. And that common factor is transcendence. All people need to do meditation, and you transcend, and you experience the silence with it. So that is the first step. Everybody has to do. After meditation, then what you do in between your morning and evening meditation is up to you. There are two types of people in this world. One is a recluse, the other one is a householder. What a recluse does, he doesn't want to be bothered with anything. He may go away to Himalayas. He wants to be alone. He doesn't want to go shopping or parties because he doesn't care for it. He's not that kind of person. So he's happy in between. They read Veda, they read Upanishads or something. They keep their mind active. And so that is Jnana Yoga, and that is for a recluse. The other kind of person, which majority of us belong to this other kind, we are householders. We have families, we have jobs. And so what we do meditation morning and evening. And in between, you do what you're supposed to do, which means a student goes to school or college, head of the household, he will go to work, and if she may go to work. Whatever you do, that is fine. So this kind of life is suitable for the householder life. That's what we have studied in the last 3 shlokas. So now we will move on to the next shloka, which is shloka number 4. Madhavi?
Yes. May I request the Vedic Pandits to recite verse 4 of chapter 3, shloka 4.
Om Nakarmala Manaramhan Neskarmyam Purushoshnote Nacha Sanyasana Deva Siddhim Samadhigachati. Om.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, Anita ji, go ahead, please.
Not by abstaining from action does a man achieve non-action, nor by mere renunciation does he attain to perfection. Non-action is the nearest translation of the Sanskrit word nishkaryam, which expresses a specific quality of the doer, a quality of non-attachment, whereby he enjoys freedom from the bondage of action even during activity. It expresses a natural and a permanent state of doer, whether he is engaged in the activity of the waking or the dreaming state or in the inactivity of the deep sleep. He retains inner awareness. It is a state of life where self-consciousness is not overshadowed by any of the 3 relative states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, or sleeping. In this state of nishkaryam, the doer has risen to the 4th state of consciousness, turiya. This, in its essential nature, is self-consciousness, the pure absolute state of bliss consciousness, Sat Chit Anand, but yet is inclusive of the 3 relative states of consciousness. Shri Krishna Bhagavan began to explain non-action in verse 48 of chapter 2 in the terms of abandonment of attachment. In the present verse, he explains it without any reference to attachment. In verse 30, he will explain it with reference to himself, surrender of all actions to God. But in every case, the direct experience of being forms the basis of non-action. By abstaining from action, one merely falls into a state of idleness or inactivity of sleep. This is far removed from the state of non-action, where the mind, deep within itself, remains tuned to absolute being, even when the activity is maintained on the surface, where the 2 fields of being and activity are cognized as separate from one another. Renunciation, a state of non-attachment where the doer remains separate from the field of activity, the state of non-action. The blessings of the state of renunciation or non-action is that the self finds itself separate from the field of activity. But the awareness of separation from activity, resulting in the total loss of activity for the self, will not bring perfection. Perfection demands not only separation from activity, but positive union with God. It means that the individual self, detached from activity on the level of the individual life, comes to unite itself with cosmic being, God, who is detached from activity on the level of cosmic life. Cosmic consciousness, the permanent state of self-consciousness, rises to the state of God consciousness. The state of non-action rises to the state of God's action. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Anita ji. Hema ji, may we have your comments on this verse? Hema ji, you are in mute, Hema ji. Kindly unmute yourself.
Okay. So there are two very important points in this shloka. And the two important words are Naishkarmyam is one, and I'll get to the second one later on. So let us try to understand what the Naishkarmyam means. Naishkarmyam means, we heard just now, that it is state of non-action. Nish, that is negative, karma is action. Even mental activity is considered to be action. So no action. So what is that Naishkarmyam? That is the that you experience daily when you transcend in your meditation. And it is a state of non-attachment. We talked about it quite a bit. And it was mentioned in shloka, second chapter, 48th verse. There it says, Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Sangam means attachment. Tyaktva means leaving. Having abandoned attachment established in yoga, then you perform action. So this point comes up again and again in Gita. And each time we will refresh our memory about what non-attachment is, because it is crucial to understand it. And of course, you all are having that experience in meditation also. So here, when it says Naishkarmya, non-action, it is important to remember that non-action does not mean that you just sit around and do nothing. You sit around and do nothing only in TM, only in capitals. So you sit and you transcend, and there is no action. So then you're not doing anything. That is Naishkarmyam. After you come out of meditation, you are engaged in action. Like I said just now, whatever action, going to work or cooking or shopping or studying, whatever. It is some kind of action. Even the recluse, they're engaged in action, and that action is studying Vedas or Puranas or Upanishad. So it is important to understand this point, that Naishkarmyam does not mean that you sit around and do nothing. The reason Maharishi emphasized it so much in this commentary is because this shloka had been misinterpreted by some commentators. They said, oh, you don't do any action because action is binding, and so you just don't do any action. And that had been very damaging for many young lives, that they misunderstood and they were just sitting around and doing nothing. So that's not what it means. So we should always remember that. Of course, we don't have that problem because, Maharishi had explained to us what Naishkarmya means. So that is the first point. And the second point in the shloka is, it says sannyasa. The word sannyasa is derived from this word sannyasa. Sannyasa means renunciation. This is another very important point, very important word to understand, because this is also very much misunderstood. So what does renunciation mean? Renunciation means that you are leaving something. You are giving up something. That's why they call them sannyasi. Everybody says, oh, you want to be like a sannyasi or what? Like that. So what that sannyasa means, what they are leaving, so when you say sannyasa, you are leaving something. So you are leaving the outside world and you are absorbed in the inside world. That is sannyasa. And again, it is important to remember that this happens in meditation. Now we are only talking about meditation very strictly. Remember that. Maharishi said, close your eyes and experience the beauty of the inside world. So when you close eyes, you go inwards, then you experience the inside world. So when you are absorbed in this beautiful world inside of you, you are forgetting the outside world, and it is almost like you are leaving it. Mentally, you left the outside world. But what did you gain? You gained the inside world. And again, this is also a state of non-attachment, because you left the outside world, and so you don't have any connection with the outside world when you are going inside, when you are in the inside world. And like I said, this is also a state of non-attachment. In that case, you are witnessing. You have the inside experience, and then Shri Bhava. Some of you must have heard about that. And when that happens, you are experiencing that separateness. What is separate from what? You go inside, you are experience your inner self. And then what is outside is the outside world. So then when you have that experience of inner self, then you are separate from the outside world. And it is called as renunciation. And again, this happens during meditation. And we are having that experience on a daily basis. And when you come out of meditation, you're back to samsara, the worldly activity around you. And that's perfectly normal, because we are living in this samsara, but we are gaining the experience of the inside world also. We are not ignoring the inside world. So it is very good that we are balanced. We have the beauty of the inside world, and then we have the happiness of the outside world. So we are advantages. Both ways, we have the advantage. And so what is the result of having this experience of Naishkarmya, which is non-action, and sannyasa? What is the benefit? What are we gaining by this experience? And Maharishi said very beautifully in the commentary, what we gain by these two experiences is union with God. So first we transcend. We experience non-action, that silence of Atma. And then you are experiencing yourself as separate from activity. Sannyasa. You left the outside world. But, again, but is in capital. This does not bring perfection. Perfection demands not only separation from the activity of the outside world, but positive union with God. So that is what we gain. Now, how does that happen? It happens when the individual self that you know as yourself. It is detached from activity on the individual life. And then it comes to unite itself with the cosmic being that we call as God. So in this state, as you all know, we have talked about cosmic consciousness, how to get there in second chapter. So from cosmic consciousness, one rises to God consciousness. The state of non-action that you experience in meditation, and when you get established in that, then you're still evolving. You're growing in higher states of consciousness. And then you grow to the state of God consciousness. And there you're in tune with God's action. You're in tune with natural law. So I'll say just a couple of sentences in Hindi. नैष्कर्म्य कर्मा, तो इसको जो विचार जो है अपने मन के विचार, उसको भी कर्म कहते हैं. जब कर्म से अतीत होकर मन शांत हो जाता है, वहां कुछ विचार नहीं होते हैं, केवल निश्शब्द साइलेंस होता है. इस स्थिति में मनुष्य अपने आत्मा और परमात्मा का अभेद होने का अनुभव करते हैं, अपने को परमेश्वर से अभिन्न होने का अनुभव करते हैं. जय गुरुदेव. So now I invite any questions from anybody, in Hindi or in English, please. No questions? And are we doing scientific research? Maybe by then somebody may come up with some questions.
Okay. Coming to the scientific research on this verse, the scientific research has proved that the practitioners of transcendental meditation were able to experience the pure consciousness during their practice of meditation, which was also reflected in their, the tests that were conducted where there was a lot of blood flow to the brain. So these were the findings of the scientific research.
Okay.
So can we have anyone posing any questions on verse 4?
Okay.
Okay. So shall we move ahead, Hemaji?
Yeah.
May I request the Vedic Pandits to recite verse 5 of chapter 3?
जी दीदी. ओ नहि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातुतिष्ठत्य कर्म कृत कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म सर्वः प्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः. ओम.
Chaitanya. No one indeed can exist even for an instant without performing action. For everyone is helplessly driven to activity by the gunas born of nature. In all the states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, which constitute relative life, outward and inward physical activity continues. Everything in creation evolves, and the process of evolution is always through activity. This is what Sri Krishna Bhagavan means when he says, no one indeed can exist even for an instant without performing action. Nature, this is the nearest English rendering of the word Prakriti. The ultimate aspect of creation is transcendental, unmanifested, absolute being. Its nature consists of the three gunas, whose various permutations and combinations constitute all phenomenal existence. Their activity continues unceasingly in all fields of creation. And that is why Sri Krishna Bhagavan says that Everyone is helplessly driven to activity by the gunas. It is only in the transcendental field of existence that no activity is possible. This verse, by establishing activity as universal, demonstrates the impossibility of gaining the state of non-action through non-engagement in activity. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Hema ji, can we have your comments on this verse?
Yeah. So again, there are two important points in this shloka. The first point is that no one can exist without performing action, even for a moment. So it is obvious when we are in waking state, we are doing some kind of activity, walking, talking, eating, reading, working, whatever. That's obvious. We all understand that. And in sleep state, we are sleeping, but the body is functioning. Heart is beating and lungs, we are breathing and everything. So that is also physical activities going on. And in dream state, it's a different type of activity, dream activity. So always some action or the other is going on. So it's impossible to be without activity in waking, dreaming, and sleep states. And everything in creation is always evolving. So what does evolution mean? Evolution means moving from a lower state of happiness to a higher state of happiness, from lower intelligence to higher state of intelligence. You see the trees growing, the buds are blooming, etc. And so this process of evolution is through activity. Some activity is going on, and that's why something is moving from a lower state to higher state. So we are always engaged in action. So this is the first point that is made in this shloka. The second point is that the reason for this is given. One is always engaged in action because everyone is, quote, helplessly driven to activity by the gunas born of nature. Nature means Prakriti. So whose nature is it? Nature of Paramatma. Nature is Prakriti. Paramatma means it's transcendental. It's beyond the relativity. It's beyond our sense perception. We cannot see it with senses. We cannot see it with the eyes. That's why we want to transcend. And it is unmanifest. It is absolute being. And so that is Paramatma. And Paramatma's nature is Prakriti. And this Prakriti consists of 3 gunas. And we studied what these 3 gunas are in chapter 2, 45th verse. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas are 3 gunas. 45th verse says, Nistraigunyo bhava. Go beyond the 3 gunas. So the entire creation consists of the interplay of these 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, and activities going on continuously there. So what we discussed in the last verse, that is Naishkarmyam, the state of non-action, can never be accomplished in the relative because everything is always moving, evolving, always. And it can only be reached by going beyond the 3 gunas. So that's what, this shloka is actually reinforcing that we have what we have already studied. I don't have any Hindi comments for this. Sorry about that. Any questions? Or maybe we should do scientific research?
Yes, Hemaji. Moving on to the scientific research on this verse. The scientific research indicates that there has been a lot of improved efficiency in the psychomotor skills and also body-mind coordination. So this is actually telling how, like in the 4th verse, we have seen the practice of Naishkarmya and how are we disciplining ourselves to elevate to the higher states.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Okay. So moving further, may I request the Vedic Pandits to recite verse 6.
जी दीदी। ओ कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः उच्यते। ओ
Jai Gurudev. He who sits restraining the organs of action and dwelling in his mind on the objects of sense, self-deluded, he is said to be a hypocrite. The previous verse established activity as absolutely necessary for life in the relative field. The present verse makes it clear that even thinking belongs to the sphere of activity. This leads to the conclusion that if action binds, one becomes subject to its binding influence, even if one has entertained only a thought of action. Bhagwan Sri Krishna says that it is wrong to sit restraining the organs of action while the mind is dwelling on the objects of the senses. Here is a definite negation of the principle of self-control. It silently suggests that the technique of controlling the senses does not lie in direct restraint. It lies rather in the field of the mind, in the sphere of mental activity. The teaching of this verse is, do not create strain by attempting directly to bridle the senses. The actual technique is given in the following verse. A hypocrite is he who is neither true to himself nor true to others. He hides his true nature. Jai Gurudev. May I request Hemaji to kindly comment on this verse?
Yeah. So we have seen in the previous verse how the physical activity is necessary in life to carry on the functions of the body. We need that physical activity. It is necessary. But in this verse, we are learning that even thinking is activity. It's called mental activity. So there is physical activity and there is mental activity. And this verse is telling us that external control of senses does not work. Why? Because I'm sure we all have had this experience, or we have seen other people have the experience. Let's say somebody is watching 20 movies a month. Then he realizes, no, I shouldn't watch so many movies. It's bad for me. I should stop or decrease, watching movies. He tries not to go to the movies, but he had gotten used to seeing so many movies. Even though he doesn't physically go to the movie theater to watch movie, he sits at home, he says, okay, I want to listen to bhajans. And he sits, but he's staying home, but his mind is thinking about the movie. And then he feels frustrated because he's not enjoying the movie and he's not enjoying staying at home. So that's one situation. The other situation is we have seen people who have smoking, and let's say somebody is trying to quit smoking and they are desperately trying, the wife hides the cigarette box and this man is trying to control, but that desire to smoke doesn't go away because your body had gotten used to it. So this makes it clear that external control is not going to work. So what is the solution to it? That is given in the next verse. And I will talk more about it, and Anitaji will be talking more about that. I have some Hindi comments for this. जो मूढ़ बुद्धि मनुष्य समस्त इंद्रियों को हठ पूर्वक ऊपर से रोक कर मन से उन इंद्रियों के विषयों का चिंतन करता रहता है, वह मिथ्याचारी अर्थात दंभी कहा जाता है. उदाहरण, मनुष्य सिनेमा जाना चाहता है, परंतु ये सोचता है कि सिनेमा जाना सही नहीं है, मैं घर में ही बैठ के भजन सुनूंगा. लेकिन मन को रोक नहीं सकता. मन सिनेमा के बारे में ही सोच रही है और आसक्ति और संस्कारवश उसका मन जबरदस्ती विषयों की ओर चला जाता है. बाहर से एक भाव दिखलाता है और मन में दूसरा भाव रखता है, अतः उसका आचरण मिथ्या होने से वह मिथ्याचारी कहा गया है. तो इसका उपाय क्या है, ये अगले श्लोक में बताया गया है. ओके, एनी क्वेश्चंस?
जय गुरुदेव. हेमा जी, इंद्रियों का दमन करने से तो स्ट्रेस और बढ़ जाता होगा.
क्या बढ़ जाता?
स्ट्रेस, दुख बढ़ जाता होगा ना.
हाँ, that's why I said, you don't go to the movie, you stay home and you get so frustrated, so it does increase stress because you're trying to do something forcibly. That's not natural. But fortunately, in the next shloka, Anita ji is going to explain to us how it is easy to control the senses. And I gave an example, somewhere else in some other group, I think. There is a monkey and you are chasing the monkey and the monkey is running. And you run after the monkey and it's running faster. But that's not the way to catch the monkey. What you do, you know that monkey likes bananas. So you put a couple of bananas in front of your front door and then you hide somewhere. Monkey will come and take the bananas. That's the way to control the monkey. It is easy. You don't have to run after it. And then, you are accomplishing your goal. Apni theek kaha, Pooja. It increases stress. Any other questions? Shall we move on then?
Yes, moving on with the scientific research. The scientific research on this verse has showed that the regular practitioners of transcendental meditation they're very natural, spontaneous, and this has been exhibited in their problem-solving aptitudes and their ability, their intelligence, performance, etc. So if there are no questions, shall we move ahead to the next verse?
Yeah.
May I request the Vedic Pandits to recite verse number 7?
जी दीदी। ओ यस्त्विन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभतेऽर्जुन कर्म इन्द्रियाणि कर्मयोगम् असक्ता शबशिष्यते। ओ
Jai Gurudev, but he who controlling the senses by the mind without attachment engages the organs of action in the yoga of action, he excels, O Arjuna. The yoga of action or karma yoga is performance of action with a skill that does not allow the senses of perception to register deep impressions of experiences. The organs of action remain at work during activity. The senses of perception also continue to experience, but the manner of the activity is such that while experiencing fully, they do not register deep impression of experiences. The man who is able to experience in this manner is described here as acting without attachment. Karma Yoga is that state where the senses of perceptions are functioning in an organized and controlled manner while the organs of action are active. How do the senses remain organized and controlled? Shri Krishna Bhagavan says that it is by virtue of a particular state of mind. How the mind arrives at that state is not explained here, for it has already been made clear to Arjuna in 45th verse of the preceding chapter. The mind has to be established in the absolute bliss of divine consciousness through transcendental meditation. This is the simple technique by which the senses of perception are automatically controlled and organized. To become a Karam Yogi, nothing need to be done save to infuse the mind with transcendental consciousness. When the senses of perceptions are active, while the mind is in the state of pure consciousness, then this is called Karma Yoga. The senses remain on their objects and the mind remains established in being. The technique of controlling the senses by the mind is elaborated in the verses 42 and 43. One has to transcend the fields of mind and intellect. So as the Lord, Sri Krishna Bhagavan puts it in verse 45 of chapter 2, one has to be without the three gunas. Now, this verse is very, very interestingly has some beautiful points. And to begin with, we understand when one works in the world with body and keeps the mind to God, that means we are Karam Yogi because we are doing our activity, but our mind is tuned to God. But when one engages in the spirituality with body, the mind is still in the worldly chores, then this is what is hypocrisy. Because here the most important point is the power of mind brings the sense organs under control. And when you bring them under control, then you employ yourself in work, and then you are also a better person, and the work that you is also better. It also gives the reply to Pooja's question that how do we control and how do we reach to that state? In point number 2, para 2, it is absolutely made very clear that this can be only done when the mind is established in absolute bliss of divine consciousness. And how it is done? through transcendental meditation. Now, what happens through this beautiful, simple technique? The sense of perception are automatically controlled and organized, and we move towards being the Karam Yogi, because when the senses of perception are active in mind, in that state of pure consciousness, then a Karam Yogi only concentrates on their objects, and the mind is always established in being. So the most important point that we take away from here is being established in being, perform action. And that action manifested would be of absolute, manifestation will be what you think you are going to, and there is no hypocrisy in that, because you're true to your action. And even when we go to the scientific research on this verse, it is so interestingly that we realize now that through this transcendental meditation, we have controlled the senses by mind without attachment. And then what is the result of that? There is less of turbulence in mind. There is more increasing calm. There is enough of self-sufficiency that we can carry ourselves in everywhere in a very balanced sense. So all these researchers, they commensurate with the points in verse 7. Thank you. Jai Gurudev.
Do we have any questions on this verse?
Maharishi gave a beautiful examples of this state. In this shloka, as Anita ji had mentioned, the most important point is when the mind is anchored to yourself, to your inner self, Atma. The mind is anchored to the inner self, Atma, and then all these sense organs, they are functioning on the surface outside. They are functioning, whatever they are doing, and it is orderly and it is effective because the mind is anchored to the self. Patang ratana, kite. When you are playing with kites, you hold the kite, you don't hold the kite in the hand, you hold the thread in the hand. पतंग का धागा पकड़ते हैं और क्या करते हैं, वहां पतंग उड़ रहा है, वो पतंग इधर जा सकता या उधर जा सकता, खेल रहा है, it's having fun, but it's not lost because it is anchored, it is stable, you are holding it. If you leave it, if you let go, it's gone. It goes anywhere in the sky, it gets driven away by wind, and it can go hit a tree, it gets destroyed. It is like a football. A football in the field where players are playing, you kick it from one side, it goes to the other. They kick it from there, it goes to the other side. So when the mind is not anchored, then one's life is like a football. It goes here and there. And so that's where the value of transcending comes. So this verse is very important verse in third chapter. It tells us the practical technique. It's very simple. Like Anita ji had mentioned, and Maharishi mentioned in the commentary, all you do is, you do meditation, you transcend. You're taking the mind to that stable state inside of you. And with regular practice, what happens? Your mind gets more and more familiar with that stability inside of you. And then the senses are automatically controlled. And then they act, they do what they want to do, but they're still under control. Okay.
Shall we move on to the next verse, Hemaji?
Yep.
May I request the Vedic Pandits to recite verse number 8?
ॐ नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्म ज्यायो ह्यकर्मणा शरीरयात्रापि च तेन विषज्येयेद कर्मणा ॐ
Jai Gurudev. Do your allotted duty. Action is indeed superior to inaction. Even the survival of your body would not be possible without action. Allotted duty is that which it is natural for one to do, that for which one was born, natural action in accordance with the laws of nature, action according to one's own dharma, action which is in line with the natural stream of evolution, action which is an innocent link between self-consciousness and cosmic consciousness, action which serves as a way to achieve God consciousness, the fulfillment of life. An important aspect of natural duty is that it is imperative for a man, if he does not perform his allotted duty, he will be engaging in actions which lie outside the path of his own evolution. Allotted duty comprises all actions which enable a man to survive and to evolve. The rightness of such action lies in this, that is, performing them, a man feels no strain. They are not a burdening life. In one stroke, they maintain life and lead to evolution. It is equally essential to understand that action, which is not natural, will inevitably produce strain and tension both in the doer and in the atmosphere around him. If the process of action is strained, it interferes with the harmony between the doer and his work, the subject and the object. This in turn hinders the infusion of the divine nature into the field of activity, and resistance is created to the development of cosmic consciousness. That is why Sri Krishna Bhagavan particularly mentions allotted duty. The question arises of finding out what is one's allotted duty. In those parts of the world where natural divisions of society still exist, a man's duty is apparent by virtue of his birth in a particular family. Thus, Arjuna is born a Kshatriya and it is natural for him to fight. But in the complexities of the mixed civilizations and mixture of traditions in the world today, it seems hard to discover one's allotted duty. If, in the absence of any scriptural authority or tradition, a criterion of natural duty has to be found, it may be said on the basis of common sense that an action which is necessary and does not produce any undue tension or strain in the doer and his surroundings in his natural duty. It is true that there may be many flaws in a criterion based only on common sense. Meditation, however, smooths the flow of life and naturally sets the stream of life in accordance with the laws of nature, upholding it on the way to higher evolution. Therefore, in the absence of any other means to discover one's allotted duty, it would be wise to accept transcendental meditation as a means to direct one towards a natural way of life. Madhavi, can you please continue?
Before I continue, Hemaji, would you like to comment whatever has been read here, or shall we proceed with the reading?
I will make comments.
Yes.
And then you can continue.
Yes, Hemaji.
So here the first point is Sri Krishna Bhagavan is saying, Niyatam Kuru Karma, do your allotted duty. So what does that mean? It is the duty that is natural to you, that is dharmic, that is evolutionary, and that which is linked between pure consciousness and cosmic consciousness, and action that serves as a way to God consciousness. So these are all the points that are included in allotted duty. Here you need to remember the word allotted, niyatam. So there is a purpose, a good purpose to be accomplished by following your allotted duty. Because Maharishi said, if you don't do your allotted duty, you will do something else. And that is not evolutionary for you. And we have just seen evolution means going from a lower state to a higher state. So your action should be such that it is taking you from a lower state to a higher state. And that, Maharishi said, we accomplish by doing your allotted duty. So now the question comes. And that is the second point. The second point is, there should not be strain on you or your surroundings. When you are performing your allotted duty, you should take it easy. When you are taking it easy and not frustrated, and then, you feel good, and then you're producing good vibrations in the surroundings. So that is the result of doing your allotted duty. But then the question comes up. How do you know what your allotted duty is? Well, some people may know that, because of the family tradition, they may know what their allotted duty is. And in that case, there is no problem. They do their allotted duty and they're happy. But if you don't know what your allotted duty is, Maharishi said, based on common sense, you do something that does not produce strain for yourself and for your surroundings. And you're moving in the evolutionary direction. So it seems like along with whatever you choose to do, if you add TM by doing TM, then you gain nature support and you're naturally moving towards a higher state. So if you don't know what your allotted duty is, the best thing is to do transcendental meditation, and then we do something that is easy and not, very stressful. And that's it. That is as simple as that. But for some people, it may not be as simple as that. Then life becomes a little bit complicated and people become frustrated. And, I'm sure, you all heard people complaining about how stressful work is. So transcendental meditation is a really good solution to get you out of that very stressful situation in life. And this point had been made very clear in second chapter, 45th verse, Nistraigunyo Bhava. You go beyond the three gunas and you take a stand in the absolute. And then you rise to cosmic consciousness. Then what happens? Then one becomes capable of performing actions which are in accordance with the natural law. That means one is following one's dharma. So in this verse, a word even is used. And Maharishi said that word even is important. That word even is significant because he said, action is necessary not only for survival of the body, but there is a more important thing than that. And he said, action is necessary for attaining God consciousness. When we come out of transcendental meditation, the divine nature of the self is brought out to be lived in relativity. That's why in the last session, we have learned that the best benefit of Karma Yoga is that the inner divinity is brought out into the relativity, and then everything becomes divine, and then life becomes joyful. A couple of sentences in Hindi. It says, Tu Shastra Vihit Kartavya Karma Kar. That is allotted duty. क्योंकि कर्म न करने की अपेक्षा कर्म करना श्रेष्ठ है, तथा कर्म न करने से तेरा शरीर निर्वाह भी सिद्ध नहीं होगा. So, शास्त्र विहित कर्तव्य कर्म, that is allotted duty. When you do that, then you're safe. You're doing something evolutionary, and then we reach higher states of consciousness. Scientific research, please.
We are left with a little more commentary to be read, Himaji.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, yes. Jai Gurudev.
Okay.
It may be recalled that when Sri Krishna Bhagavan began to instruct Arjuna in the art of spontaneous right action, he advised him to come out of the field of relativity and take his stand in the field of absolute. He would thereby rise to the state of life, that is cosmic consciousness, where one becomes capable of performing actions in complete accordance with the laws of nature, thus fulfilling one's dharma and serving the cosmic purpose. Sri Krishna Bhagavan says, action is indeed superior to inaction. And he then adds, even the survival of your body. These words contain great wisdom about the integration of life and a supreme secret of evolution by way of action. The word even is of deep significance. If survival of the body is the least result that Sri Krishna Bhagavan attributes to action, what then is the greatest? It is the attainment of God consciousness, the highest state of human evolution. Here, Bhagavan Sri Krishna means that without action, not only would the body not survive, but the heights of evolution would not be attained. It must therefore be understood how action is necessary for attaining God consciousness. When during transcendental meditation, the mind goes so deep within that it transcends the subtlest state of relativity, it attains the transcendental absolute state of being. This is the state of pure awareness or consciousness of the self. When the mind, having been in that state, is subjected to action, the transcendental divine nature of the self is brought out to be lived in the field of relativity. First, the worldly mind of the waking state is led to the inner divine nature by the inward stroke of meditation, which is a withdrawal from activity. Then, by virtue of embracing activity through the outward stroke of meditation, the inner divine nature is brought out into the world. It should be noted that in stressing the indispensability of action for the maintenance of life and the attainment of its purpose, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is careful to qualify the action to which he refers. He does not say, do your duty. He says, do your allotted duty, your natural duty. How this commandment of Sri Krishna Bhagwan may be brought to bear on life can be expressed in one word: meditate. Meditation is the key to the performance of one's allotted duty. It is a direct way to make glorious every aspect of life, for it transforms a life of bondage in the world into the divine life of eternal freedom in cosmic consciousness, where one experiences the self as separate from activity. Cosmic consciousness, in turn, develops into God consciousness through devotion, the most highly refined type of action which unites in the light of God the two separate aspects of cosmic consciousness, the self and activity. This is the blessing of action, that it leads one from the waking state of consciousness to transcendental pure consciousness, thence to cosmic consciousness, and finally to God consciousness, the highest state of human evolution. Jai Gurudev.
So I made the comments already, but one point needs to be stressed, and that is devotion plays an important role. Once you meditate and you're experiencing your inner self, Atma, and you're getting established in Atma, and then you come out and, you do whatever. And then what happens once that state is established, then devotion expands your heart. And with this very refined activity of devotion, one rises to God consciousness. And then, everything you begin to see, in terms of divine. So this point, comes up again and again in the, future chapters. And that is the role played by, devotion. So that is the second step, next step. So by doing allotted duty, you are doing actions that are evolutionary, that are dharmic, and life in tune with natural law. And then you are growing in consciousness, and that consciousness is, you are established, and then you continue to grow after cosmic consciousness. And here, devotion plays a very important role.
Himaji, can I add something here?
Yes.
Just a minute,
Sure.
not much. Since our emphasis is on the meditation as the key performance in one's allotted duty, what I take is that the work then, when it is performed in attitude of your duty, it also leads into the internal purification. And it also gives a discipline of mind and the senses. For this is very much required for the progress of our own soul. So do we understand that the allotted duty also helps us in our own purification, internal purification, and disciplining of mind and senses? Because then everything is done accordingly.
Right. Then when you do your allotted duty, your karma is in line with your dharma.
Right, exactly.
Both go hand in hand. That is the value of doing allotted duty. And Maharishi made it very clear. When you don't do your allotted duty, you're doing something that is not allotted to you. Then your life becomes unnatural.
Right.
Unnatural means it becomes stressful. So That's where the value of allotted duty comes. And then life becomes easy and natural because everything flows in line with nature. So when your life is according to the nature and it's natural, life is easy. It's like a river is flowing like this, and if you're swimming like this, it's easy.
Right.
Now, river is flowing like this, but you want to go like this. You're trying to go against the currents of the river. How hard it becomes, you can imagine. River is flowing powerfully. You're not getting any support. You're getting obstacles. You're getting resistance. If you're trying to swim like this in the opposite direction to the flow of the river. That is the simplest way to understand that. So if you understand this point, then you will realize how easy life becomes when your life is in tune with nature.
Yes, Hemaji. And the scientific research too very clearly proves that when you do your allotted duty, even the survival of your body would not have been possible without action, because as we know, action is indeed superior to inaction. So that inertia, that laziness of inaction is overcome, because now we get greater moral maturity because we have grown in evolution. So scientific research also proves that there is high levels of moral reasoning when we do our allotted duty and in the way that we must do. Thank you, Jai Gurudev.
Do we have any questions here at this juncture? Shall we have a short meditation for 5 minutes?
Yep.
May I request all of you to just close your eyes and start your meditation? Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. So may I request the Vedic Pandits to chant chapter 3?
जी जय गुरुदेव। ओम शांताकारं भुजगशयनं पद्मनाभं सुरेशं विश्वाधारं गगनसदृशं मेघवर्णं शुभांगं लक्ष्मीकान्तं कमलनयनं योगवृद्ध्यानगम्यं वन्दे विष्णुं भवभयहरं सर्वलोकैकनाथम्। ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ तृतीयोऽध्यायः। अर्जुन उवाच जायसे चेत् कर्मणस्ते मता बुद्धिर्जनार्दन तत् किं कर्मणि घोरे मां नियोजयसि केशव। व्यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन वध्यं मोहयसीव मे तदेकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहमाप्नुयाम्। श्रीभगवानुवाच लोकेऽस्मिन् द्विविधा निष्ठा पुरा प्रोक्ता मया नघ ज्ञानयोगेन साङ्ख्यानां कर्मयोगेन योगिनां न कर्मणामनारम्भान् नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते न च सन्न्यसनादेव सिद्धिं तमधिगच्छति न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठत्य कर्म कृत कार्यते हि वशः कर्म सर्वः प्रकृतिजयी कर्मयाणि संयम्य आस्ते मनसा स्मरेन्द्रिया मिथ्यास्ते यस्त्विन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभते अर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियैः कर्मयोगम् असक्तः स विशिष्यते नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्मज्यायो ह्यकर्मणः शरीरयात्रापि च न ते प्रसिद्ध्येद कर्मणः यज्ञार्था कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्मबन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय उक्तः सङ्घः समाचरः सह यज्ञा प्रजा सृष्टा पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः अनेन पृषविश्वध्वम् एष वोतिश्च कामधुक् देवान् भावयतानेन ते देवा भावयन्तु वः परस्परं भावयन्तः श्रेयः परमवाप्स्यथ इष्ठान् भोगान् हि वो देवा दास्यन्ते यज्ञभाविताः तैर्दत्तान् प्रदायेभ्यो यो भुङ्क्तेस्तेन एव शः यज्ञशिष्टाशिनः सन्तो मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषैः भुञ्जन्ते त्वघं पाप ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात् अन्नाद् भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्यादन्न संभवः यज्ञाद् भवति पर्जन्यो यज्ञः कर्म समुद्भवः कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षर समुद्भवं तस्मात् सर्वगतं ब्रह्म नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितम् एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रं नानुवर्तयति हयः अघायुरिन्द्रियारामो मोघं पार्थ सजीवति स्त्वात्मरतरेव स्यात् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन्येव च सन्तुष्टस्तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते नैव तस्य कृतेनार्थो न कृतेनेह कश्चन न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिद्धर्थव्यपाश्रयः तस्मात् सक्तः सततं कार्यं कर्म समाचर असक्तो ह्यचरन् कर्म परमाप्नोति पुरुषः कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम् आस्थिता जनकादयः लोकसंग्रहमेवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि यज्ञताचरते श्रेष्ठस्तत्तदेवेतरो जनः स यत्प्रमाणं कुरुते लोकस्तदनुवर्तते न मे पार्थास्ति कर्तव्यं त्रिषु लोकेषु किंचन नानवाप्तं वाप्तमव्यव्यं वर्त एव च कर्मणि यदि ह्यं न वर्तेयं जातु कर्मण्यतन्द्रितः मम वर्तमानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्यः पार्थ सर्वशः उस्येदेयुर्मे लोका न कुर्यां कर्म चेदहं शङ्करस्य च कर्तास्याम् उपहन्यामि मा प्रजाः सक्ता कर्मण्य विद्वांसो यथा कुर्वन्ति भारत कुर्याद् विद्वांस तथा सक्तश्चिकीर्षुर्लोकसंग्रहम् न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेद ज्ञानां कर्मसंगिनां जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन् प्रकृतेः क्रियमाणानि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः अहंकारा विमूढात्मा कर्ताहमिति मन्यते तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहो गुणकर्म विभागयोः गुणागुणेषु वर्तन्ता इति मत्वा न सज्जते प्रकृतेर्गुणसम्मूढाः सज्जन्ते गुणकर्मसु तान् कृष्णविदो मन्दान् कृष्णभिन्न विचालयेत् मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि सन्न्यस्याध्यात्मचेतसा निराशीर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगतज्वरः हेमैमतमिदं नित्यम् अनुतिष्ठन्ति मानवाः श्रद्धावन्तो न सूयन्तो मुच्यन्ते तेऽपि कर्मभिः हेत्वेतभ्यमसूयन्तो नानुतिष्ठन्ति मे मतम् सर्वज्ञानविमूढास्ता विद्धि नष्टा न चेतसः सदृशं चेष्टते स्वस्याः प्रकृतेर्ज्ञानवानपि प्रकृतिं ज्ञानि भूतानि निग्रह किं करिष्यति इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्न वशमागच्छेत् तौ यस्या परिपन्थिनौ श्रेयांश्वधर्मो विगुणः परधर्मा सुनिष्ठितात् स्वधर्मेण धनं श्रेयः परधर्मो भयावहः अर्जुन उवाच अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं पापं चरति पुरुषः अन्यच्छन्नपि वाष्णेय बलादिविनियोजितः श्रीभगवानुवाच काम एष क्रोध एष रजोगुणसमुद्भवः महाशनो महापाप्मा विद्येनमिह वैरिणम् धूमेन व्रियते वह्निर्यथादर्शो मलेन च यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस्तथा तेनेदमावृतम् आवृतं ज्ञानमेतेन यानिनो नित्यवैरिणा कामरूपेण कौन्तेय सुपूरेण नलेन च इन्द्रियाणि मनोबुद्धिर् यस्याधिष्ठानमुच्यते एतैर्विमोह्य यच्चेषा ज्ञानमावृत्य देहिनम् तस्मात् त्वमिन्द्रियाण्यादौ नियम्य भरतर्षभा पाप्मानं प्रजहिह्येनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम् इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुरिन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिर्यो बुद्धे परतस्तुषः एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा हस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे कर्मयोगो नाम तृतीयोऽध्यायः। ॐ श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु। ॐ जय गुरुदेव।
Jai Gurudev. Can we go ahead with the Shanti Part, Manishji?
Yes.
जी दीदी। हरि ओम माधव शांतिरन्तरिक्षगो शान्तिः पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्ति ब्रह्म शान्तिः सर्वगुं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः क्षमा शान्तिरेधि जतो यतः समीहसे ततो नो अभयं कुरु शन्नः कुरु प्रजाभ्यो भयन्नः पाशुभ्यः। हरि ओम। ओम शांति शांति शांति। जय गुरुदेव।
Jai Gurudev.
गुरुदेव।
Thank you all for joining. You all can unmute and come on videos now. Jai Gurudev and happy girl. And thank you for reading and reciting. Jai Gurudev Bani. Bella, I said Jai Gurudev to her already.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
जय गुरुदेव।
Jai Gurudev Hema ji.
Jai Gurudev. What did you say?
Jai Gurudev Hema ji.
Jai Gurudev Bella. Oh.
Jai Gurudev.
जय गुरुदेव दीदी।
Jai Gurudev Maharishi, nice chanting. Thank you for nice lady chanting and Shanti part and everything. So
Jai Gurudev Hema ji.
Jai Gurudev Anita ji, nice reading and nice explanation, nice
Thank
comment
you.
and scientific
Thank you.
research. Hema Bindu and Madhavi, thank you all for joining and reading and contributing. See you next Friday, same time. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
जय गुरुदेव।